I watch it all the time. I love watching the OTB shows with the personalities, and then I watch when I'm at home, I've got it on watching the races, and it's great now that they've got the replay of it live, you know, like 2 or 3 minutes after post. So, you know, they flip it off, and 2 minutes I'm gonna get to see the live race. So I always take my program home with me, and if I'm not back at the barn, I'm watching it at home.
Here comes Into Mischief. He is outside of Eaton's Gift. Into Mischief puts his white glazed face in front. Eaton's Gift is second. Massive Drama's got to go right now, 2 from the front. Colonel John has 3 to come, and Into Mischief is the leader. It is Into Mischief, and he is 2.5 lengths in front. Massive Drama. Colonel John trying to run him down. Into Mischief wins the Cash Call Futurity.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with my colleague Mike VIETCH, the racing columnist with the Saratogian, I'm Mark CUSANO, welcoming you to this morning's program on a rather lovely December Saturday morning for our final show of the year. And over the next hour or so, we will be presenting you with 2 very special guests to talk with you and update you on really the most important topic here in New York right now, the continuing saga of the racing franchise. We will be joined shortly by Senate Majority Leader Joseph BRUNO, and later on, hopefully, by NYRA President Charlie Haywood, who, as we speak, is in a meeting just down the street at the New York State Racing and Wagering Board. During our topical discussion period, a number of trainers and jockeys making news. We'll take a look back at the Cash Call Hollywood Futurity, as well as the opening day feature at Santa Anita, the Malibu. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us for our December 29th edition of Down the Stretch. Partner, good morning.
Well, good morning. This is going to be a very enjoyable, interesting show, and I would like our audience to understand, this reminds me of my teaching days of the junior high school and young senior high kids. I can honestly say that for Mark and me this morning, this show is truly the proverbial work in progress, is it not?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. How was your Christmas?
Very nice, and I hope yours was too, and everybody out there.
You know, we may not have as much good news to present to you during this morning's program as we would like, but we'll start the show with some very good news. Congratulations to our associate producer, Julie Hoxie, who on Thursday became a grandmother. Her daughter, Sarah, had a baby girl, and mother and daughter, and grandmother for that matter, all doing very, very well. So Julie now becomes the youngest grandmother in history, or at least the youngest looking grandmother in history.
Yes.
Is my mic working properly so she could hear that? Congratulations, Julie. All right, let's get into the show. And boy, it was a tough week. Dale Baird, the winningest trainer in the history of thoroughbred racing, died in an automobile accident last Sunday in Indiana. Dale Baird was 72. And listen to this statistic, his 9,445 career victories is approximately 3,000 more than the man who is second on the list, that being Jack Vanberg. And partner, that's a staggering statistic.
It is, and this is a very tragic thing because I considered him still young at the time of his death and still in the midst of a wonderful career.
And Frank Gomez, who developed future champions Princess Rooney, Smile, and Cherokee Run, died last Sunday at his home in Florida. Frank Gomez was 78. He had been based at Calder since way back in 1971. And when those outstanding horses, let's face it, outgrew South Florida, Frank, who didn't care to travel all that much, turn them over to Neil Drysdale and the late Scotty Schulhofer and Frank Alexander. But Frank Gomez developed those champions. Frank Gomez in the Calder Hall of Fame.
Won titles all the way down there, and he deserves to be there, and he had no problem sending them on to bigger careers. He enjoyed the development process.
And congratulations to Jerry Hollendorfer, the king of Northern California. Last Saturday in Southern California with 2 victories, became only the 4th trainer in history to have saddled at least 5,000 winners. The 58-year-old Hollendorfer trails only the late Dale Baird, Jack Van Berg, and King Leatherberry on that list. And what an accomplishment it is to get to 5,000.
Absolutely.
That is truly amazing. And congratulations to trainer Gary Contessa, who recently equaled the record for most victories in New York in a calendar year. Contessa scored victory number 156 of the year in Wednesday's opener at Aqueduct to tie the mark set by Hall of Famer Frank Pancho Martin back in 1974. Ironically, Contessa worked as an assistant to Pancho for about 5 or 6 years in the early to mid-1980s.
Nice. Good guy.
I checked this quickly. Gary Contessa has about 17 horses entered this weekend in New York in an attempt to break Frank Martin's record. Last Saturday at the fairgrounds, it was the Steve and Sean show as trainer Steve Asmussen and jockey Sean Bridgmahan combined for an amazing 6 winners on the 10-race card. And folks, they got beat a nose in the finale for number 7. They also won the 4 stakes. How about that as a pretty good day? Is that amazing? Truly amazing. Congratulations to Steve and Sean, and congratulations to jockey David Flores, who swept the 3 opening day stakes last Wednesday at Santa Anita. The 39-year-old Flores won the California Breeders' Champion Stakes with Bob Blackjack, a 2-to-1 shot, won the Sir Beaufort with Monterey Jazz at 5-to-1, and he won the Malibu with an 11-to-1 shot, Johnny Eves. So congratulations to David. Some bad news coming out of Southern California. Beleaguered, troubled jockey Pat Valenzuela has lost his conditional license. The California Horse Racing Board has taken it away because he violated the terms of that conditional license. How many chances do you give to somebody? I mean, Pat's got to get this straightened out. And also last week, the passing of champion older fillier mare Queena, who back in 1991 was the champion older fillier mare. She died, she was euthanized due to colic. She was 21. And in her championship season, when she was trained by Shug McGahee, she won the Ballerina, Mascot, and Ruffian. She was a nice
In order that got her the title, one of Mr. Prospector's zillion stakes winners, and she and her mother both won the Mascot, she being too chic.
All right. The feature race from the week past last Saturday at Hollywood Park, the Cash Call Hollywood Futurity in a field of 12, grade 1 for $750,000. The favorite at 2-to-1, number 8, Colonel John. The winner of the Real Quiet for last week's guest, Owen Hardy. The second choice at 3-to-1, number 2, Massive Drama. The winner of the Hollywood Preview, sprinting in last. And the third choice at 6-to-1, number 10, Manba, owned in part locally by Don Lucarelli of Duanesburg. Now, they would all run pretty well in finishing 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, but in the end, it would be number 12, Into Mischief, in the orange and purple silks of B. Wayne Hughes, the beaten favorite in the Hollywood Preview, who would come back and upset the Futurity, and pretty handily at nearly 14-to-1. The son of Harlan's Holiday, stalking the early pace set by Eaton's Gift. He's going to take over an upper stretch, and he's going to gamely hold off his rivals to win by a length and a quarter for Dick Mandela and Victor Espinosa, who had both been enduring very tough meets at Hollywood Park. But what a nice victory by Into Mischief.
I think what marked this for me was the length of the sustained, powerful stretch kick and the really professional manner in which he did this, Mark. Of course, that's a hallmark of Hall of Famer Dick Mandela. Only start number 3, got his start in life very late in October in Southern California, and just looks ready to go anytime he's asked to go. And when he goes, he keeps going very strong and very powerfully. He's first crop from Harlan's Holiday, who was the favorite in his Derby after winning the Bluegrass in the Florida Derby. This guy now joins Warpass, Wicked Style, Dixie Chatter, and Georgie Boy as the Grade 1 winners this year. Dixie Chatter, I think, is also Mandela.
Yes,
Am I right?
yes, I'm almost certain
he's
you're
got
right.
2 of them. And this is a race that in the last couple of decades has given us Snow Chief and Ferdinand and Ali Sheba, AP Indy, real quiet, point given. Personally, I think the 1, 2, 3 finishers here have very promising careers at age 3.
Actually, the only thing I'm going to disagree with
go ahead,
is
yeah.
I'm going to add the 4th finisher because Mamba was a sneaky
He was.
good
I agree.
4th
Yes.
in there.
Yep.
I mean a sneaky good
Yep.
4th. The reason I didn't like Into Mischief, he had set a perfect trip when finishing 2nd in the Hollywood preview. What I didn't know until I read the quotes from Dick Mandela, in the preview, the day he was favored, Dick said he got worked up going to the gate. He was aggravated.
Okay.
And here he behaved much, much better, and that was a very nice performance. I like Colonel John, had dead aim, ran well, but couldn't get anywhere near him. But the more I looked at that race, the more I like out of Manba's effort, finishing a very close 4th, 1 minute 40 and 4/5 for the cash call Hollywood Futurity. Very quickly, the emails and letters this week. We want to thank Bob from New Hartford. Remember, Bob is the gentleman who owns, in part, both the exciting New York Maiden winner Saratoga Russell and the Gold Rush Stakes winner El Gato Malo, who had been ridden by Pat Valenzuela. And Bob thanked us for the show. He had so many nice things to say. Bob, thank you very much. And from Captain David Wimbush, who has been based halfway around the world in Iraq for the last couple of years, we are thrilled to tell you that David is home on vacation, home for a stay, I should say. David will be here until next Saturday. David, we hope you're watching the show this morning. And we have enjoyed corresponding with you over the years. And we hope next time you're back in Albany, it's for good, not just on a leave. But enjoy your time here very, very much, and we hope you enjoy this morning's show. And from George asking about the NYRA calendar giveaway. NYRA themselves will have the calendar giveaway on January 1st. Here at Capital Off Track Betting at the Teletheater on New Year's Day. The first 200 in attendance will get the NYRA calendar. And thanks to Linda for sending her card. And Linda, we will answer your questions on next week's show. So thanks to one and all. For those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, here are the ways in which you can do that. Through the United States Postal Service, Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB, 510 Smith, Schenectady, 12305, or electronically at viewermail at capitalotb.com. And we are up to our first break on this morning's, our final show of 2007. When Michael and I return, we will welcome in our first guest this morning. He's a very special guest. He's a first-timer to the show. And, after being on for almost 16 years, we don't get an opportunity to say that all that often. Senator Joseph Bruno, the New York State Senate Majority Leader, will join us, and he will chat with you about what's happening with the franchise issue. As we go to the break, opening day at Santa Anita, David Flores Day, and the Malibu, the 3-1 favorite from Bobby Frankel, number 2 Le Grand Trois, and the second choice in the 14-horse field from the extreme outside post at 3.5 to 1 was Divine Park. So we'll take a look at the Malibu going to the break, and Michael and I will be back with Senator Joseph Bruno right after these messages.
And away they go. All appear to come away well. Johnny Eves in the white cap is very fast, but Horse Greeley is now sent along on the outside to join him. Along the inside, Desert Code is right there with Easy Warrior, 1 from the rail, 4 of them lining up. Silver Stetson Man in the red in 5th, Divine Park on the far side. Now here's Le Grand Trois, back 7 lengths off the leaders. Incriminators the grey. In behind that is Cobalt Blue, giving them 8 lengths start. Then we come back to Unusual Suspect, been followed in by Cordillero, racing far back. Great Hunter is taken towards the rear now. A good 12 off these leaders. I Didn't Do Anything second last, and Hurry Up Austin last. Into the turn they go. Easy Warrior alongside of Desert Code, the two leaders on the outside. Johnny Eves in the white cap, and Johnny Eves now takes over. Horse Greeley in the goal comes immediately after him. Then Silver Stetson Man. Divine Park now being ridden along as back 6 off the leaders. Down at the rail, La Grande Trois, and then Incriminate, and behind that Cobalt Blue. Top of the lane in the Malibu Stakes, and Johnny Eves the leader. Johnny Eves chased now by Horse Greeley. Divine Park down the centre. Catalero's running on late as well. They pass the 8 pole. Johnny Eves now hanging on to it. Down the centre, here comes Catalero with a late run. Johnny Eves finds more on the lead, and Johnny Eves and David Flores has won the Malibu. Catalero running on gamely second, then Horse Greeley, a photo Le Grand Trois, and Hurry Up Austin for 4.
This is the OTB Television Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Mike Veach to my left. I'm Mark CUSANO. The Malibu goes to Johnny Eves for trainer Jay Robbins, and I believe this was Jay's first Grade 1 victory since Tisnow.
I would think that's right.
In 2001. The Breeders' Cup Classic, of course, David Flores, by a length. The unusual thing about the Malibu, the 7/8 was run in 1 minute 21 seconds. That in itself is not unusual. But that was 4/5 of a second slower than 2-year-old Calbreds ran the California Breeders' Stakes earlier on the card. And that is very unusual. Our first guest this morning was first elected to the 43rd Senate District, which includes most of Saratoga County, back in 1976. And he joins us this morning at this very critical time for racing here in New York State. Ladies and gentlemen, live via telephone, Senate Majority Leader Joseph Bruno. Senator Bruno, Mark CUSANO, and Mike Veach welcoming you to Down the Stretch.
And thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Glad to have you again, Senator.
Happy New Year to you. Senator, let's begin. Please update our audience on where we currently stand on the franchise issue.
Sure, Mark. I'm happy to have the opportunity, and I heard that I hadn't been on your program in 16 years.
That's right.
That's hard for me to believe. Have I been invited? I hope I have.
All right.
And I know Senator Bill Larkin's been on, and he chairs our Racing and Wagering Committee. And as you know, Bill is one of the most dedicated people in the Senate and very knowledgeable. So he has been representative, hopefully, of what's going on. But Mark and Mike, thanks for your interest and thanks for all the good things that you do. And let me just share, and I want to clarify something. Some of the reports have been that it's Joe Bruno against Naira in the negotiations that have been going on over these last, literally, 3 years, with the previous governor and then this governor. That couldn't be more erroneous, and I need to correct that, because from the get-go, we have indicated that NYRA knows how to run racing and runs racing and ought to continue to run racing between the rails. That was our initial position, and that is still our position. Now, having said that, when the governor proposed that NYRA go ahead for the next 30 years and that the state bailed them out for $200 million out of their bankruptcy, and that we go on with a reconstituted board, I said 30 years is too long. You need some benchmarks so that we know what is happening over the years, and recognize that what is happening now with the current model has put us in NYRA $364 million in debt and in bankruptcy. So, to the governor and to all the others that think you ought to just go forward with the status quo, I have said I thought they were wrong. So, what were we proposing from the beginning was to negotiate in public. And Mike and Mark, that's our problem. All of this negotiation has been behind closed doors. I have asked the governor for public meetings on this issue. I've asked the Speaker of the Assembly for public discussion. The people have a right to know what the differences are as to what we'd like to have happen and what the governor or the Speaker would like to have happen. And for clarity, it's very disturbing to me that the Speaker, when I talked with him a few weeks ago, and I've talked with him several times, said, it's not a priority. It's not important. You know, you're obsessed with it. And the governor, to his credit, has had his people for the last several weeks seriously negotiating what we can get done. Hopefully, with the thought that they can get the assembly there with the Speaker. And I'm comfortable that they'll get them there. But where we are right now is that we're negotiating, and I'm hopeful that we are going to come to an arrangement, a negotiated compromise that is going to allow NYRA to go forward and do everything that they're doing now.
Senator, please update the audience on where we currently stand on the temporary franchise situation.
Well, I think, Charlie Haywood, you mentioned is before the Racing and Wagering Board.
Yes.
And Mark, it's important that the public and that you know this. The law says that the oversight board that we created, all, you know, with bipartisan support, they have the authority to extend and to move forward. They've already concurred. We've talked with them. They've concurred that this is going to go forward. So it is not by law up to the Racing and Wagering Board, and I will be surprised if the Racing and Wagering Board injects themselves in this. That's my latest information from our councils. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter. That is asemantic. It is unnecessary. Charlie would be better served being here with you than being there, because it's a done deal. It is a done deal that racing will continue, even though we're not going to have legislation in place. So what we're trying to do is to get an agreement, a conceptual agreement, that we can then put into bill form and negotiate the detail, the wording, and get it passed first half of January, hopefully.
Senator, let's talk briefly about this temporary situation. Racing will continue uninterrupted on January 1, and it will continue to January 23rd under the temporary situation. Senator, why January 23rd?
Well, Mark, I believe it's because the 21st is a holiday, and the 22nd of January, the governor puts his budget out, and so I think the 23rd was just picked as a reasonable, arbitrary date. Nothing magic about it. I'll be prepared. If we can get it done, we'll do it on January 10th. We're in session on the 9th. We can stay on the 10th. We're back on the 14th. We in the Senate, the Republican Senate, and I am prepared as quickly as we can draft a bill to put it in bill form and pass it. and that's our commitment. But they're telling me, the councils and from all branches, from the assembly, from the governor, that it may take a couple of weeks to just get everything down in detail. And it's very, very difficult sometimes to transfer what you agree on into a legal bill that you can pass, and hopefully we get it passed unanimously. But it's a done deal, practically speaking, Mark and Mike. And for anyone that has a huge interest in this, it is a done deal. There will be no interruption. And frankly, I, for one, have never, ever thought that there would be an interruption. I think a lot of that was rhetoric that was out there, people negotiating and, digging in and drawing lines in the sand, which is not very productive.
Senator, let me ask you a two-part question, if I may.
Sure.
Part A, how close are you at present to a permanent franchise agreement? And part two would be, how confident are you that you will have a full-fledged agreement in place by January 23rd?
Mark, I'm extremely confident of that, and I believe that we will be prepared to announce an agreement because we're down to a couple of details in what we have been talking about. And as I said, with the agreement that's on the table, that I do believe we will get out public. I hope we could get it out before we were on the air, but we haven't been able to. But I'm hopeful we can do it by certainly Monday, which is the 31st. But what's important for all of the interests, the 40,000 plus employees, the owners, the breeders, the jockeys, everyone having to do with the vendors, the business community, we have a done deal, practically speaking, to continue racing. Now, Mark and Mike, again, for clarity, my position has been that let NYRA do what they do best, and we have huge business interests. The most successful people in the world, many of them, have taken an interest in helping New York State have world-class racing, world-class destination points. We have one of the greatest markets in the whole world. And so I have thought, since Saratoga is my district, and I have a love for horses, love for Saratoga, a love for everything having to do with that industry, what I have said is, let people who have done it successfully from the business point of view, from the VLTs and the gambling point of view, let them do what they do best, and let NYRA do what they do best. So I thought conceptually that made a heck of a lot of sense. The previous governor thought so. That's why he put an ad hoc committee in place with 9 very dedicated, committed people who worked diligently for a couple of years, headed up by Pat Barrett, a hugely successful businessman. This governor came in and said, nope, let's erase all of that and let's start all over again, and took control. And here we are now approaching the 31st with him taking control, and we have nothing that we could have ratified. But I'm saying to you and to the public, I was prepared to do it 3 years ago, 2 years ago. That's why I've been calling for public meetings all through this year. Called for public meetings 3 weeks ago to get clarity as to what are we trying to get done. Bottom line is, we want the best racing in the whole world. Saratoga is the premier place. It truly is the crown jewel, and it's my district. So anyone out there who doesn't think that Joe Bruno has the best interest of Saratoga in his heart and his mind and whatever he brings to his office is just plain wrong. Because when we needed $22 million, I think 25, to just keep NYRA's cash flow positive, you ask Charlie, ask Steve Dunker, the chairman, ask the board members, who stepped up to take the lead to get it done? Joe Bruno and the Republican Senate. Do you know how we passed that? Mike and Mark, do you know how?
No.
With 32 Republican votes last year, before the bankruptcy. Why? To keep them out of bankruptcy and to create a positive cash flow so you wouldn't jeopardize racing. I did that with not one single Democrat vote in the Senate. Now, why? Because Saratoga is so critically important. Racing is so critically important. What's my bottom line? That we have an opportunity of a lifetime to have the best racing in the whole world. But Mark, you're professionals. How are you going to have the best racing in the whole world in New York State? What's it take? You tell me.
Well, Senator, let's discuss for a few
But
moments.
let me just quickly then say this. You need cash, right? You need purses that will compete with the rest of the world. You need breeders' fees that compete with the other states that are catching up to us with breeding. You need stallion fees so to encourage stallions to stand here in New York instead of us all having to ship to Kentucky and back here. Not all of us, but many of us. That's what you need. And if you do that, the business aspects of the 6,000 horse owners in this state will be enhanced. And they're business people. They naturally will follow where the dollars are, where the competition is, where the fairness is, where the safety is, and that should be New York State. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's all I'm trying to accomplish and achieve. And I know that Charlie and Steve and all the rest of the board members on NYRA have the same motives. We just presently had some differences in how you get there, but we're resolving those.
Senator, one of the ways where purses are increased, and in some instances dramatically, is through VLT revenue. VLTs were approved here in New York, I believe, sometime in 2001. We have seen them at any number of harness facilities, and very successfully, by the way, locally here at Saratoga Gaming and Raceway. We've seen them go in at Finger Lakes, but at the most critical racing venues, the New York Racing Association, we haven't seen VLTs since the inception of the law in 2001. Why not?
Mark, I'll tell you why not. Because, number one, the Speaker of the Assembly hung on to a technicality when the original laws were struck down. That's why. And when I negotiated the budget with Speaker Silver and Governor Pataki, let me just share with you that Speaker didn't want VLTs at Aqueduct, and he said that they weren't appropriate and not proper. And I said that we're surrounded, we are an island with VLTs all around us. Pennsylvania, presently with 62,000 installed, New Jersey, you name it. Connecticut, 2 biggest casinos in the whole world. Canada surrounding us. Massachusetts now gearing up. So I said, Shelley, you want casinos in the Catskills? You want a casino in the Catskills? Then we're going to do a trade. You vote for VLTs in Aqueduct, I will vote for casinos in the Catskills. And we made a deal. And what happened? As soon as the courts intervened and said there was a constitutional question, we corrected it. Mike, we corrected it in the Senate. You take a look at the record. The Assembly wouldn't, and they dragged their feet. Then NYRA started getting into serious trouble. I talked to MGM, the CEO, several times. He was committed to put VLTs up. He had $7 or $8 or $10 million invested. I talked to him 2 months before they cratered the deal. Now, Pataki dug in because they were trying to settle land claims and other things and wouldn't allow the VLTs to go forward through the Lottery Commission. Why? Because they didn't want the revenue to be used against the taxpayers of the state in any adverse way. And there was some validity to that. And the NYRA board and the NYRA administrators and officers couldn't satisfy the governor. So it was a matter of finger-pointing. Governor saying that NYRA wasn't stepping up, and the NYRA saying that the governor wasn't stepping up, and I tried to play the moderator here and the arbitrator to just get something done. And we have lost well over $2 billion in revenue that by law should have been there. Now, I can tell you that there's no way we would have lost $364 million. There's no way that NYRA would be in bankruptcy if we could have had those VLTs up and running. And there's enough blame to point to everybody and anybody. Fact of the matter is, we have the opportunity of a lifetime. We should have those VLTs up and running. We have private sector people, the best in the whole world, and I'm not going to name them, who have huge success stories, who know how to get it done. Let's let them go in and do it. And for the life of me, I can't understand the speaker. The governor wants VLTs at Belmont. Everyone in the whole industry agrees they ought to be there, including the local Democrats, who don't seem to have the the guts to stand up publicly and say it in Nassau County. They all want it. But the speaker folds his arms and says, no, we're not going to do it. We did get a concession that he'll discuss it as part of the budget, because to enhance the purses, to enhance all of the other breeders' fees, the stallion fees, to do everything that has to be done, you need that cash flow. So that's kind of where we're at, but we're not going to get those done as part of this package, but we'll take another crack at it in the budget. But I think we all agree the only way you're going to have the world-class racing, the very best racing in the whole world, is to fix the model that hasn't worked, that has put NYRA into bankruptcy. And our model is get professionals who are business developers. BRUNO has an interest. They're the biggest real estate investment trust in the whole country, and they want to go in and help market. They want to go in and build. What is wrong with getting people like that involved? So NYRA hasn't done it. They've had years, and they haven't done it. So all we've been saying is let the professional business people do the business part, and let NYRA do what they do so well, run racing. But we're way past that now, Mark and Mike. What we're doing is letting NYRA go right ahead and do everything that they've been doing with some changes. We're going to be moderating every 3 years or so that you take a look that they are meeting the criteria and meeting their financial plans, and to implement them so that you don't end up 3 years from now worse off than we are today. So other than that, nothing changes. NYRA goes forward, and you're creating certainty. And that's what we've been trying to get done here for weeks.
Senator, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Are you saying that you are very close to a permanent franchise agreement, and that will be announced soon?
Yes, Mark, that's exactly what I'm saying. Absolutely. And I hope that we can get it done by Monday and announce it by Monday.
I'd like to announce it before the end of the show if we could. Senator,
So would I, Mark.
Let's talk about some of the specifics, because there are certain issues, critical issues, that have been holding up, I think it's very fair to say, holding up progress on this agreement. One is the control of the simulcasting signal.
Yep.
NYRA says we must control our own signal. Senator, you have called for an outside agency to handle that. How do you currently stand on that issue?
We're willing to make a deal and to compromise. And the way you get a result, and I'm looking for a result, I want just to create certainty for all of the people involved in the industry in Saratoga and throughout New York State. So we're going to compromise. NYRA will continue to run the signal as they have in the past. Now, our position has been you've got some of the professionals in the whole world who have marketed this signal extremely successful. And when I hear that they have marketed it extremely well, then I say again, why are we in bankruptcy? Why are we in debt $364 million if we've been so successful with the business aspects? But that's behind us. We're willing to go forward with NYRA, and hopefully that with a reconstituted board, with some fresh thinking, and with Charlie and the others doing what they do so well, that the whole model changes. And that's really where we are presently directed.
Senator, one of the other critical issues...
So that's no longer an issue is what I'm saying.
That's wonderful. The land ownership has been an issue. The 30-year length of the new franchise has been a major issue with you, Senator. Let's talk about the 30 years first. What will happen in the new franchise? Will it be for 30 years?
Mark, it will not be for 30 years, and there's no reason for it to be for 30 years. It literally could be for 10 years. It could be for 15. It could be for 20, 25. What's magic about 30? What is important is, but it'll be for a long period of time. It'll be past our active lifetimes, at least mine. Not yours, because you're youngsters. But,
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I can see. But we're talking, we just said 30 years was too long. That's all. But the compromise is that you'll have periodic reviews to make sure that everybody is doing what they say they're going to do. If we have had that for the last 10 years, you wouldn't be in bankruptcy, and you wouldn't be $364 billion in debt. So that is going to go forward with a long, long time. And what's on the table now is, just not 30, but believe me, it's long enough so that everybody will be satisfied and happy, and I hope that NYRA understands that. And there's just nothing magic about it. What's magic about 30? What's magic about 25? What's magic about 20? What you need is the next 3 or 4 or 5 years to get our arms around this, to create world-class racing, to get the development, the marketing, the business aspects, the simulcast signal, the OTBs, all consolidated. And that's part of what we've discussed and negotiated, to put something in place to continue to negotiate the OTBs so that they don't compete with racing. They should be in tandem. They should be partners. They should be supporting each other. And that benefits the 19 million people in New York State, which should be the bottom line for all of us.
Well, Senator, I can tell you that you have two people here who are absolutely thrilled to hear that you are very close to a permanent franchise agreement. There are 40,000 people out there directly involved in this sport who are thrilled as well. Senator, will the New York Racing Association turn over the land, Saratoga, Belmont, and Acton, to the state?
Mark, very much to their credit. I don't think there's any question that when the franchise transfers back to the state, the land follows it. But they have a different opinion, and you have bankruptcy lawyers there now, and you have trustees there now, so that creates some uncertainty. So to avoid the uncertainty, NYRA is showing good faith for getting a permanent deal in place for whatever the years are. It'll certainly be at least 20 years into the future. They will give up the legal fight, and hopefully we get them out of bankruptcy with a $200 million infusion, and then they get out of bankruptcy and they go forward and they give up their land claims, so you have certainty. And everybody is on the same page, everybody partners, everybody goes in the same direction. And again, that we have huge successes in New York to benefit the great majority of people here in New York State, people in Saratoga. That's my objective, and I know that's Charlie Haywood's objective, Steve Dunker, the board members. Everybody's well-intentioned, certainly the governor and the speaker, but we've just got to get our egos set aside, and I've done that a long time ago, and get a deal done to create certainty. So that's kind of... And there's a lot of other aspects of this. The horsemen, do their purses get protected? Yes, they have to be protected. You don't want $25 million in purses being tied up in bankruptcy. That has to be set aside. They ought to be negotiating with NYRA like they do in 49 other states for the horsemen, for their purses. So those are some of the other issues that are on the table that hopefully get resolved. Again, bottom line, create certainty in the industry, to make this a destination point for everybody in the world, and to have really world-class racing here in my district and in New York State.
But Senator, just to reiterate, you are confident that in possibly a matter of days, there will be a major announcement on the permanent franchise to run racing.
Mark and Mike, please, and your viewers understand this. If I could have done this deal all by myself in the Senate, we would have done it 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago. I would have done it in June before we left here to create certainty. I cannot do it by myself. I need a partner. I need the Speaker of the Assembly. I need the Democrats who control the Assembly to agree to pass the same legislation, because we have to do it in identical form that we're agreeing on. And what we're agreeing on are the things that we're discussing here. And we need the governor to sign the bill when it gets to him. So consequently, you need the governor to agree, because if he vetoes part of it, then it doesn't become law. Right. So that's why we're negotiating 3 ways and have been. Now, what I'm saying to you is that all of the things we're talking about, we're agreeable to. NYRA continues. They continue for a number of years, decades, into the future. and they don't lose any of the power, the resources, the management that presently is in their jurisdiction. But you have a reconstituted board, which creates some imagination, some creativity, some new insights, and the oversight committee plays a role. This present governor has a right to play a greater role, and that will happen. So I believe we have a deal. Now, if Naira wants to walk away, if the governor walks away, if the assembly walks away, there's nothing that I can do about that, because I can't make it law by myself.
All right, fair enough. Senator, Michael's got a question for you.
Senator, actually, I'm going to yield my question, and I'm going to thank you for being with us this morning. You've really provided tons of interesting information. And I'm going to urge you to, if you will, stay tuned for the next 15 or 20 minutes, please.
I will.
I hope you will, okay?
Let me share with you that I just left the barn where I have these two young fellows mucking stalls. And so I stopped mucking stalls, and I've got to go down there and help finish cleaning the stalls, because that's my therapy on Saturday morning.
I understand.
Well, okay, but I will stay here.
Hold it for 15 minutes.
I will stay here. Okay.
Senator,
won't let you down.
Thank you.
Okay.
Senator, thank you very much.
And listen, if you have nothing else to do, come on up.
Okay.
Okay.
Senator, thank you. You have an open invitation to join us again. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, and we'll certainly do that.
And
Thank you.
we're looking forward to that major announcement shortly, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it, Senate Majority Leader Joseph Bruno. Now, we are up to our final break on this morning's December 29th edition of Down the Stretch, and we have a very pleasant surprise. When we return, the president of the New York Racing Association, Mr. Charlie Hayward, will join us in studio. So we're going to take a pause. You're going to take a look at a promo from Capital OTB about something brand new here at Capital, and Michael and I will be back with NYRA President Charlie Hayward right after these messages.
Capital OTB now offers internet wagering at www.capitalotb.com. It's a safe, secure, and simple way to wager. Now you can use your Capital Bets account number to wager from your computer or over the phone. Just log on to www.capitalotb.com. Click on the Wager Now icon. Punch in your Capital Bets account number and your PIN number. Choose your track, scroll down, and hit Continue. Click on the track icon again, then choose your race, the amount you would like to wager, which type of wager you would like to place, and finally, choose which horses you would like to place the wager on in the runners section. Click on the Buy Wager icon when you are finished. A review page of the details of your wager will appear. Make sure that you check your bet to ensure that you have the bet that you want, then hit the Submit icon. You will then see a confirmation of the wager placed, and a printable receipt will be available for your personal records. It's really that simple, and it's a safe and secure way to wager. Wagering with Capital OTB has never been easier. All you need is a Capital Bets account. If you don't have a Capital Bets account, log on to www.capitalotb.com today. Sign up for your Capital Bets account and get into the online game with Capital OTB.
This is the OTB Network.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone, and our thanks once again to Senate Majority Leader Joe Bruno, who has held off, finishing mucking stalls for another 15 or 20 minutes while we introduce this morning's final guest, and we're thrilled that he was able to join us in studio.
Hey, Mark, how are you? Good to see
Charlie,
you. Mike,
good morning.
Good to see you, Charlie. It's a pleasure for us to have you here this morning, and know you've been on the road and know you've been busy this morning. As I said to Mark at the start of the show, this was clearly a show that's a work in progress, and it's still unfolding right now. So I'm going to open with a question that I actually did not have, because Senator Bruno really leaned in the direction that very soon something approximating a final agreement is near between the New York Racing Association and the state of New York. If you can comment on that, please do.
I was able to hear, while waiting
Yes.
to come on here,
Yeah.
the Senator's, optimism and enthusiasm. I wish I could share that the view that we were that close. I still think that all parties are talking. I still think there are a couple of substantial heroes. I don't want to discuss the particulars of,
understand that. No,
of
we
the
do.
deal,
We
but
understand that.
I think everybody wants to get it done. I think everyone wants racing to continue. I think everyone realizes how important that is. But the main thing is, what we can't do is replicate a situation where you have a franchise that's doomed for failure, which is what the previous franchise was. The racing statutes were never changed properly. The OTB situation wasn't addressed. There were things that evolved. For example, when account wagering started in New York, and the Senator talks about, NYRA's mismanagement. When account wagering was started in New York, the OTBs had zero minimum balance for phone wagering.
Understood.
NYRA had $450 minimums. Well, where would you put your money? When I came to NYRA in 2004, New York City OTB had $250 million in account wagering. NYRA had 20. So we were disadvantaged and completely put out of competition. And most recently, this spring in May, when we started internet wagering, none of the OTBs had gotten up to speed. We're ready to start internet wagering. And we were told by the Racing and Wagering Board we couldn't video stream our own races on our own website without the approval of the OTBs, and of course they didn't give it. So we're not maximizing the opportunity that exists there. So I think that we've got to get this right. I think there's some maybe subtleties and important things that we understand as racing people that we've got to fight and preserve for the industry. So I appreciate all the good efforts in all the parties, but I don't think we're quite as close as I just don't share the view of the Senator.
You're in Schenectady this morning at the SRWB offices applying for a license to conduct racing on a temporary basis until January 23rd. Two-part question. We're assuming you got the permission.
It's a little, like everything in racing, it's a little more complicated than that, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, sure.
We're here.
I've got a follow-up. Go ahead.
We're here today as a result of an agreement that we reached with the Oversight Board.
Yep.
And they were represented by Paul Weiss. We were represented by our attorney, Patrick Kehoe, and our bankruptcy counsel. And the Attorney General was in there, and they were signatories to this agreement. We reached an agreement where we all took the view that under the terms of that agreement, it was important for us to come and get a license. So we filed a license. I got to give Dan Hogan a lot of credit. He was very responsive. These guys worked overnight. And their view, it was a very brief meeting actually, their view was under Section 254 of the racing law, which is I think the constitution of the Oversight Board, was that a license wasn't required.
Okay. So
that wasn't our understanding that we have with the Attorney General. It's not the understanding that we have with the Oversight Board. Mr. Hogan made it very clear he wanted racing to continue.
Okay.
And so we've got to regroup. I've got Mr. Kehoe waiting in the wings here. We're going to talk with our folks down in New York because we need to get something done that gives us the assurance that we agree with the board and we can go forward.
Legally.
So, legally, that's
legally.
correct.
So at this point right now, there's still a question about post-December 31.
Yeah, there certainly is, because with the way that we want it to go doesn't appear to be the way that, that we're going to go. But again, I think all the interested parties want to run on January 1st. And so I think there's still a very high probability that that will be the case. I just don't know in full certainty that that's the case until we can reconvene and get back to the Oversight Board and back to the AG.
You have a timetable for that later today?
Well, we're going to talk certainly later today.
Yeah.
Again, I give all members of government a lot of credit. We were working with the governor's people, through the entire Christmas weekend. I think we all agreed that Christmas Day wasn't a good day to talk, but other than that, they've been available, and people have been working hard on this. So, I'm confident that we'll have our discussions today. you know, from Saturday morning till Monday at midnight in Albany time is like, you know, a decade. So.
We've heard that. We've heard that. Charlie, again, recognizing that there may not be specifics you want to go to, I'm still going to ask this question, and perhaps we can get some kind of a general response from you. When the senator was on, he indicated something that may be at variance a little bit with you in terms of a final agreement. Nonetheless, as we speak at this moment, is the New York Racing Association holding firm to what I think are a few core positions, such as the idea of a board removal, not reconstitution, the idea of your control of a simulcast signal, and holding on to your land claim situation until resolution. In general, is NYRA staunch on those issues as of this morning?
I'm going to come at it a different way and hopefully give you the answer.
Go right ahead.
What I will say is that NYRA has the approval of its board for the MOU.
Yes.
And the MOU calls for us turning over the land in exchange for the economics, in exchange for a 30-year term. It allowed for a reconstitution of the board, a pretty substantial reconstitution. It took our private members from 20 down to 13. Then there were 4 political appointees, and then a member, which I think is great, from both the breeders and the thoroughbred horsemen. That's our position on the board right now.
Yep.
And I know there's some differences of opinion about that. So we are still very committed to the MOU. There's some other issues that we're negotiating. I was pleased to hear the senator mention simulcasting. I don't know where he gets his information, but NYRA does the best negotiating of simulcasting in the country. Mm-hmm. We get the highest rates. You can talk to any racetrack operator, any OTB. So I think that I was pleased to hear the senator saying that that was, you know, something that that the Senate had moved on. But you know, we spent a lot of time negotiating and explaining to our board the terms of the MOU, and those are the things that are still very important to us.
Saratogians, for the last several weeks, and particularly as we speak this morning, have got a lot of worries about the coming year. They're concerned about a number of things. We already know that reserve seat applications are not being taken. If I speak in general on behalf of some people in Saratoga, or maybe a lot of people in Saratoga, I think it's fair to say that Saratoga Springs has been in what you might almost call a generational period of prosperity. And I will insist, speaking only for myself, that the fulcrum of that is the growth of Saratoga Racecourse for the last 25 or 30 years. They're still worried, despite what they might have heard from Senator Bruno. Address those things this morning as the president and CEO of NYRA.
Well, you know, I'll take one step back before I go right at that specific question. I've been deeply troubled the entire process of this franchise because there's been a lot of discussion about VLTs. There's been a lot of discussion about restaurants and hotels. And no one's talked about racing and advancing racing, keeping NYRA number one. No one's talked about reforming the racing law so it'll actually work. No one's really sat down and said that we can get anything done with the OTBs. So I think what's not been put forward has resulted in exactly some of the concerns that the people in Saratoga have today. We want to make sure that we get a deal going forward that will keep training spring and fall at Saratoga, that will keep the 3 tracks together. So I think that you know, this temporary solution, if we get it, you know, we have said all along we didn't want a 90-day extension. We wanted the tightest extension we could to make sure that we got this thing done, that was focused as a priority in the legislature, and I think that that's hopefully what we'll accomplish here. But you know, I have a home in Saratoga. I know a lot of people there, and of course you live there. You know, people are concerned, and I think until this gets resolved, I think they should be concerned.
In this temporary situation, is NYRA going to continue operations as they normally have?
Yes, I think that you know, the one thing that we've proven that we can run racing. I will tell you, Mike and Mark, it's pretty hard to look at 1,300 employees every day. I try and walk the plant and get around, and they ask me what's happening. I'm the president. I'm supposed to know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. And 2,000 backstretch workers. You know, we've got over 2,000 horses at Belmont and Aqueduct. Those people have, the owners and the trainers have hung in. You know, clearly this little 23-day extension is helpful, but it doesn't really solve the long-term problem. You probably saw the ad that the breeders took out.
Yes, yes.
You know, I think the breeding community is hurt already. The fact that VLT's up and operating, I'll bet you there's some horses that have gone to Pennsylvania because they're getting those supplements. So, you know, I'm concerned for the whole industry, and the sooner we get this done. And people say, you know, when do you think it's going to get done? And I say, well, it should have gotten done last March, and it hasn't been. But hopefully, The senator sounds very committed to resolving this. Again, I don't quite share his optimism, but he knows more about these processes than I do, and I hope he's right.
One of the questions I have that you really just alluded to, in a sense, speaking about maybe this should have been done last March, I'm going to raise this. Given the failure of Albany leadership, and the senator might take issue with that if you're watching, but given the failure of Albany leaders actually for a number of years to conduct franchise review and to get this thing done on a timely basis, Charlie, do you have concerns that when we get into general session in January and they all come back, and the NYRA situation is now one amongst of a number of statewide issues? Senator Bruno linked it to the budget as one of the reasons the 23rd was a target date. So my specific question is, do you have concerns that there may be fracturing again if this comes out in the general session? Or do you think we're on course for something?
I've had concerns from the day I walked in the door November 4th, 2004.
3 years ago. Yes.
Having said that, I will tell you, the efforts of the Senate, the efforts of the Assembly, and the efforts of the governor have been sincere. There's been, unfortunately, it was a little late in coming. There's been a lot of activity over the last couple of weeks. I think that it would be a bad thing for all concerned to not get this thing done. I think that it's important for the racing industry, obviously, but I think it's also important for the state. I think we need to be able to point to some things that we can get done governmentally in this state. And I think racing could be one of those things that's obviously beneficial. If you don't care anything about racing, and obviously we do, but if you don't care at all about racing, you want this to get resolved because there's $400 to $500 million a year in monies to education from the VLTs. And so I think there's a lot of momentum. I think there's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot at stake. And I'm hopeful that the momentum that we have right now will continue on to the first of the year. And I say that with all the backdrop and the pragmatism of prior events, but I'm optimistic.
So my final question then, before Mark may have a couple questions for you, and then as we speak to you on this morning in December 29th, okay, I'm asking Charlie Hayward, do you feel that we're more in forward motion than we were a couple of months ago? Taking the whole picture.
No question about it.
Okay.
I just hope that, I would say 3 or 4 months ago we were kind of in midfield.
Okay.
Maybe 4th down and 5, but we're inside the 10. We're probably first in goal at the 9.
Okay.
So we got 9 important yards in front of us, but that's better than having 50 yards in front of you.
Thank you, Charlie. Mark.
Let me give you part of Eric Donovan's job for just a second as a line maker.
Right.
What's the line on racing continuing on January 1 at Aqueduct?
Again,
on a temporary basis.
I think it's 1 to 5. I mean, I think that all the parties, whether it's the Racing and Wagering Board, the Senate, the Assembly, the horsemen, the breeders, everyone agrees that it would be a huge mistake for it not to continue. And I think that with that recognition, despite the differences, I think that, Chairman Hoggett said it today. He said, look, we want racing to continue. We don't think we need to we know we don't have to give you this license, but we want racing done. So I think everyone's sincere, and I think it's going to happen.
It sounded from Senator Bruno as though the control of the simulcasting signal, which was very critical to you, it sounds as though that has been negotiated, where you will still have control over the simulcast signal. Is that accurate?
I defer it to the senator. That seems to be what he was suggesting. So
it sounds like the reconstitution of the NYRA board, not the total elimination of the board, but a reconstituted board, appears to be in place as an agreement. Is that an accurate statement?
Again, I think our view of the MOU isn't universally shared by all the parties, so I would say that's a point that still needs to be discussed.
Is the key point right now, Charlie, the length of the franchise?
There are a lot of key points. So I think that to focus on any one point right now would be a mistake. There's a lot of issues about the conduct and how we conduct ourselves and the agency overseeing us in addition to Racing and Wagering Board. And so again, I don't want to get into the nits and the gnats, but I don't think it's just, at this point, it's just 1 or 2 things, and that's why I think I don't have quite the optimism that the senator does, but again, he's more experienced and perhaps knows better than I.
Originally, when we heard about the temporary solution to the problem, it was an open-ended situation. Now it's January 23 specifically. Did NYRA ask for January 23rd as an ending date for the temporary situation?
Yes, we went into our discussion. Again, this was based on the document that we negotiated with the Attorney General and with the Oversight Board. And, you know, to be very candid, if racing's going to stop, I'd rather have it on January 1st. You know, we can forego the interborough handicap for a year. What I don't want to do is stop racing the week before the Wood Memorial. And that's what we were looking at with the 90-day extension. And I'm hoping racing never stops, but it may, if it comes to 23rd and we don't have things done, you know, I can't imagine there would be a further extension of this period. I think we need to roll up our sleeves and get this done.
Charlie, we can't thank you enough for stopping in. I mean, this was quite possibly one of our most important shows we've done in nearly 16 years, having two of the most important people in New York State as far as this issue goes, with Senator Bruno, the Senate Majority Leader, and Charlie Hayward, who has been so gracious over the years in joining us. And we wish you all the best in getting this ironed out. We know how critical this is.
Well, thanks very much, and it's always a pleasure to be here. I know you've got a wonderful, wonderful audience, a lot of our very good customers, some of my very good friends, so it's a thrill to be back here, and I appreciate you giving us the time to talk about this important matter.
Let's get it worked out.
Okay, let's do it.
Senator, let's get it worked out.
Thank you, Charlie.
Ladies and gentlemen, final reminder for those of you who'd like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, if you've got a comment on the Senator's discussion or for Charlie, and we can always pass these comments along down the stretch. Mark and Mike, Capital District OTB, 510 Smith, Schenectady, 12305, or electronically at viewermail@capitalotb.com. Want to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show on the air. Pat Peretta directed, and Kurt Flick, and our associate producer, Julie Hoxie, a new grandmother. Youngest,
I didn't know that.
Could be the youngest grandmother in history, Charlie. So, as always, folks, thank you so much for having joined us this morning. Have a safe and wonderful new year, and Michael and I will see you again in 2008.